Good afternoon, friends. Welcome to the press conference of 9th Governing Council meeting of Niti Aayog that took place today. We welcome Sri Suman Berry, Vice Chairman person of the Ayog, and members Sri V.K. Saraswat, Professor Ramesh Chand, Dr. V.K. Paul, and Sri V.K. Virmani, along with CEO Niti Aayog, Sri B.V.R. Subramaniam. Vice Chairperson will make opening remarks. After that, CEO Niti will give details. After that, we will take questions. Thank you very much. Over to sir.
Thank you all for being here. As you know, today was the 8th meeting of the Governing Council of Niti Aayog, which has been meeting since Niti Aayog was created or founded in 2015. The Governing Council includes the Honorable Prime Minister as chairperson, those who are here, members and myself, and also members of the union government, as well as additional members. And you would have seen that the entire composition of the Governing Council of Niti Aayog was announced in a release about a week ago. What is the importance of the meeting of the Governing Council? It is the supreme body where states and the center come together to talk about the development strategy for the country, and it meets in the form of Team India. I think there are two things that are of importance about this particular meeting of the Governing Council. First, that it took place very soon after the historic third term of this government. The second is that it retained the focus on Viksit Bharat at 2047. This had been the subject of last year's Governing Council meeting as well. Of course, since then we've been through an important general election. But I think that if it was the purpose of the Honorable Prime Minister when he spoke from the ramparts of the Red Fort on August 15th, 2022, to launch a national debate on how India should use its Amrit Kal of the next 25 years, I would say that first, he has succeeded. Second, that this is much more about a national mobilization than it is about a particular document. And third, that with the return of this government, it is the central focus of the efforts of government and the states. I'll leave my opening remarks at that. I would now ask CEO Niti Aayog to make his presentation and then ask him to direct questions in the question and answer. So, CEO, would you take over?
Yeah, thank you, Vice VC. Friends, this is the 9th meeting of the Governing Council of Niti Aayog, and this was announced quite well in advance. The Prime Minister had said pretty much in March that he would be convening a meeting of the Chief Ministers soon after the elections are over, which he did promptly. So soon after the election results and he was sworn in, he held a meeting
and the date of the meeting was decided as 27th. Of course, the obvious reason being that with the parliament being in session, everybody is around. So just to, get over what may be exciting some of you, what was the participation like? Then that's what I think. So that's the curiosity all around. We had 10 absentees. So let me be very clear. There were 10 absentees and we had 26 participants. All states and UTs put together are 26 in number, 36 in number, minus 10 absentees, we have 26. Who are the ones which are absent? We had absentees from Kerala. That was indicated much earlier. I mean, pretty much early. I mean, probably 10, 12 days ago. We had Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Telangana, Bihar, Delhi, Punjab, Himachal Pradesh. The last minute, we had a dropout from Jharkhand and Puducherry for some personal reason. Bihar was having an assembly session till late yesterday evening. So there was no way he could have arrived. That was the reason why Bihar didn't come. The Chief Minister of West Bengal, however, was present, and she was also there. You may have seen some flutter here and there, etc. The Chief Minister of West Bengal had made a request to be given a turn before lunchtime. So I'm just putting facts on the ground, no interpretations. It was a very clear request from their side, because normally we would have gone alphabetically. So it begins with Andhra Pradesh, then Arunachal Pradesh, and then, it goes on further down. Because West Bengal would be W, which would certainly come post-lunch session. They wanted a request. It was in writing, and we actually adjusted, and the Raksha Mantri actually called her in just before Gujarat. So she made her statement. Every chief minister is allotted 7 minutes, and there's just a clock on top of the screen which tells you the time that is remaining. So it goes from 7 to 6 to 5 to 4 to 3. At the end of that, it shows 00, nothing else. Nothing else has happened other than that. And what happens is the Raksha Mantri just does that on his table. That's it. And that's it. And then she said that, look, I would have liked to speak for more time, but I'll not speak anymore. That was it. There was nothing more. We all heard. She made her points, and we respectfully heard and noted her points, which will be reflected in the minutes. So I thought I will get over that at the beginning, because I think that's what most people will be curious about. To mention the fact, her chief secretary continued to attend, and he was in the room even after she left, because she had to catch a flight to Calcutta. She said that she had an assembly session. That's what she told me. In the morning itself, she told me. So that's as far as that is concerned. Now coming back, so I'll take about 10 minutes to quickly brief you on the proceedings of the day. The agenda was titled Viksit Bharat, and it had two major items on the agenda. One was an approach paper for preparing a vision document for Viksit Bharat, and the second is the outcomes of the Chief Secretary's conference, which was held in end December, where the theme was ease of living, and certain conclusions were arrived at on 5 sub-themes under ease of living in drinking water, electricity, education, health, and land. So those conclusions of the Chief Secretaries were to be discussed and endorsed by the Chief Ministers. There were 2 parts of the agenda. As the Vice Chairman just said briefly, Viksit Bharat is something that the Prime Minister has been emphasizing since Independence Day 2022. From the ramparts of the Red Fort, he said we should start preparing for a Viksit Bharat by 2047. A lot of work has been happening since then. In a way, this is a part of that process. And to just make it more transparent and easier for all of you, we had in the agenda note circulated a document called an approach paper for a vision for Viksit Bharat at 2047, giving justification. Why is a Viksit Bharat plan needed? Why is this the opportune moment? Do you think India has the capabilities? What does Viksit Bharat mean? And what do we all need to do to plan that out? That document will be distributed to at the end of this press conference. I think copies are ready. My officers are there. They will just be distributing it to all of you. Now, a lot of the discussion was on this item. The Prime Minister, in his own opening remarks, emphasized on the need for this. He talked about his own travels around the world. He talked about his experience of G20, and he talked about the goodwill that is there around the world for India and the need for India, in his own words, to grab the opportunity. And if you don't grab the opportunity, you will lose something which the whole world expects you to do. I think that is something he said. And he said, but a Viksit Bharat, which is a developed India by 2047, cannot be achieved just by wishful thinking. You must have tangible goals which have to be pursued. And he said that the chief ministers have a major role in this, and that's why it was being discussed here. It is because a lot of the action for Viksit Bharat is the collective action of states. So his basic request to all the states is, please develop vision plans for yourself, for each state, because Viksit Bharat at the national level is an aggregation of a lot of Viksit states. And to tell you all, the good news is, over the last year, a lot of states have moved ahead in preparing vision documents. Uttarakhand has one, Uttar Pradesh has one, Gujarat has one, Tamil Nadu has one. In the pipeline, we have Goa, we have Madhya Pradesh, we have Chhattisgarh, we have Orissa, we have Assam, and we have a couple of other states also, Bihar, lining up to prepare vision documents. And I think he made it very clear, why does the aspirational district program or the aspirational block program succeed? It succeeds because it is clear, monitorable, with fixed targets. And if you have fixed targets, you know whether you are online or not. I think if you want to achieve Viksit Bharat, you should have fixed targets. So he emphasized that please prepare vision plans where you have targets which are monitored. It may not be for this generation, it may be for the next generation, but it's important that you are on the path from now itself. I think that is something he said. And the second thing, and you will get it from the paper we'll be circulating to you, India has demonstrated its capability in actually setting a target and achieving it. Be it in sports in the Asian Games, be it in Chandrayaan, be it COVID vaccines, be it in science and technology, be it in G20, we have demonstrated our ability to leapfrog and deliver what we promise. The nation, the Prime Minister said, is bursting with energy, competence and confidence. I'm translating into English. See, this is what he said it, I was just noting the same, but this is the correct words. Confidence, energy and competence, it's all around. And it's the job of the leadership of the country at the national level and the state level to fulfill the hopes and aspirations of the people of India. And he said this is a golden opportunity. The second point he said is, it's not by throwing money alone that you can get everything. Money is often not the constraint. It's how you use the money, and more importantly, it's good governance that is necessary. And whether you want to succeed locally or globally, it's good governance and acting together which can take us to the outcome. He also talked about the positivity that is there for FDI around the world towards India. He wanted states to compete with each other to attract FDI into the country. So that, and he wanted a template to be prepared about how good states are. And the specific word he used is an investor-friendly charter. And start an investor-friendly charter and ranking states on how investor-friendly they are. So it's actually a modified version of EODB, ease of doing business, but actually a better one, where it will include a whole host of things like the legal system, what are the laws which are hindrances, what is the reduction in procedures which need to be simplified, what are the incentives that need to be given, how good is the law and order, how good is the transparency, how good is the infrastructure. So he's actually asked Niti to construct an index so states can compete in attracting FDI. End of the day, you can liberalize everything in FDI at the national level. But where the FDI flows is also important. And he made the point that if everything ends up in one corner of India, it's not good for the country. It needs to flow to all corners of the country. And I think he wants to use competitive federalism as a mechanism of doing this. Coming back on ease of living, I don't want to go into details. You can ask any of us later on. But the 5 themes on drinking water, we looked at, the document contained things like access, quality, and reliable quantity of water that is there. I think the Jal Jeevan mission has done very well. We were less than, 16%, 16% of the households had tap connections when the program began. It's crossed 76% now. That's phenomenal. In rural areas, in urban areas, it began from 40 and has crossed 70%. Hopefully by the end of next year, it would be. The Chief Secretary's conference that discussed, that was on the agenda here. A lot of chief ministers spoke about how they are doing in drinking. For example, the LG of J&K said that by December, we will be 100% covered by household tap connection. There were discussions on quality. There were issues on maintenance. End of the day, it's not just the tap. Water has to flow and it has to flow continuously. I think those were discussed. Electricity was the other thing on ease of living. It's about electricity connections, quality of supply, fluctuations. There's been a dramatic improvement in the country over the last couple of years. And the question is, what are the best practices, how they can be different? Chief ministers had a lot of things to say on that. The third was healthcare. A lot of programs are there, but there's variable outcomes across the country, and a lot of best practices are there. Tamil Nadu has something on trauma care, Andhra has something on family doctors, Arunachal Pradesh has something called medicine from the sky. They're using drones to deliver medicines in interior areas. So they were all there. There are a lot of challenges. This is one of the items. And on schooling, it was not on money and expenditures. It's about, is the school functioning? How easy to get admission? Why do children drop out between classes, and why don't they continue to higher education? So I think one of the conclusions which was put up to them was that there should be a unique AP, APAR ID, APAAR ID for school students. So the moment they fall out of school, doesn't matter any school, but they fall out of the system, you can track them back and bring them back into the system. I think that's a thing. And lastly, on land, there's a lot of things about, it's not about land, it's about ease of access in terms of transferring land, getting it registered, mutated and all that, and building permits. They were all there. So these were the large number of items that were discussed under ease of living. The Prime Minister just said a couple of things which are equally important. He talked about please strengthen districts and make them drivers of growth. In India, districts are the sizes of provinces in other countries, and our states, many of them are the size of countries. I mean, UP is bigger than Brazil, and so on and so forth. So you have to make districts as drivers of growth. He wanted states to, push. He mentioned about the threat posed by cyber security, and he gave examples of how, with increasing use of more and more advanced technology, it is becoming even more difficult. How you can actually have a fake identity of a person actually talking to you 3D, you will not recognize who that person is. So I think he alerted, because we're all vulnerable and states are more vulnerable. They do not have the kind of systems Government of India has in these things. States covered a large number of issues. There were states which talked about the future, about how they are planning for the future. Some of them raised very interesting issues. An important point which was raised by some ministers, chief ministers, and responded to PM is the issue of demographic management. I'm using that word because it was used exactly that way. It is about the country actually aging. Your median age today is 28, 29. By 2047, it will be 38, 39. But the number of old people is going to grow from about 130 crores today, 13 crores today, to about 35 crore people then. But the question is, soon after that, it will become a rapidly aging population. A rapidly aging population means you need to start planning for that from now itself. How are you going to take care of them, both economically, socially, their living conditions, their own, welfare systems? That is one. And of course, some chief ministers talked about, very often trying to change a decline in population at a very late stage may not be successful. And a lot of countries have failed to do it. South Korea is an example. Japan is an example. Now China is an example. Maybe some states are thinking in terms of managing demography. Quite different from what we were used to, say, 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. That maybe India has crossed the hump. At least some states have crossed the hump. And they may be running into a declining population scenario. So these were the issues. Some of the other interesting thoughts posed by chief ministers were a skill census. And I think that was an interesting idea which is there. There is another interesting idea on linking of rivers, which was posed. I think the broad consensus is let's start beginning link rivers within the state itself. so that you can throw surplus waters from one to the other. And as consensus builds, it can be thrown across rivers in neighboring states. A lot of discussion on clean energy, going renewable, going to green, etc. But at the same time, the need to improve base load capacity, which will require nuclear, hydro, or thermal. That is one of the important points that was discussed. I think broadly, there was another thing, and I think that's very important. And I think the PM also responded to in his closing remark about zero poverty. I think that was very clearly mentioned. It was raised. I think we should stop now talking about, we have delivered services to families now, drinking water, electricity, gas, house, etc. I think we should now start targeting zero poverty and target it at a village level. By village, can we think of a method by which we can declare villages as villages with zero poverty? I think it's a very interesting concept floated by some people in the room, and I think the PM responded, it's a very good idea. Why don't we carry it forward at the village level, declaring places by as zero poverty villages, and that way you then are not talking about poverty in percentage or some broad numbers, 20 crore, 30 crores. You're talking of there is nobody poor there, and then moving on to other places. I think it's a very, very interesting concept. I will end here. I've covered about 80% of what was discussed. I took some time, and now I will leave it to the audience for questions. I'll also pass it on to the members and VC who can answer some of the questions. Thank you.
Yeah. Now we'll take questions. I will request that please introduce yourself and your organization. So number 3, start with number 3.
Good evening. I am Priyashmita from Informist Media. I have 2 observations. One is related to the budget. The budget had a mention that after this financial year, the center will start targeting a particular debt to GDP ratio. In this context, the states would also have to set a particular debt to GDP ratio for themselves. So I just would want to ask, considering fiscal prudence is something that is on the panel for the governing council body, were there any conversation on this? And quickly, since Virmani sir is also here, who has great perspective on trade, I would like to ask, the budget also mentions about FDI from China. So since you're speaking about making states competitive for FDI, how do you see this Chinese FDI working out for India, especially when we have actually taken trade protectionist measures like anti-dumping duties or import restrictions? So these 2 things, please. Thank you.
I'll give a quick answer and then give it to Dr. Virmani. Neither of the 2 were discussed, so I'm putting it up front because they were not on the agenda. But I'm sure at some point in the future they will need to be discussed. Dr. Virmani?
I don't think, I think this discussion is about the Niti program and what we discussed. I'll be very happy to answer your questions on Monday, Tuesday, whenever, but they are really not very related to the conference we've just attended. So just get in touch with my office. I'll answer both your questions.
I'll give another thing. You see, our agenda was prepared prior to the budget or even economic survey. I mean, this was circulated on 17th of July. So there was no way, we need a 10-day notice to give this. So obviously that was not to be, but I'm sure Niti provides a forum for a lot of these things to be actually thrashed out, and I'm sure it will be.
78.
I would like to add to that. Though Chinese FDI was not discussed, Prime Minister discussed at length how to attract FDI. And he just talked based on his experience in Gujarat. So he just nudged the states that how they should attract FDI. He talked about ease of doing business, better governance, repeal of unnecessarily law, which may act as a sort of block for FDI to come to any states. So he emphasized a lot on FDI, but not specifically on Chinese FDI.
I could just say that the budget only referred to the glide path for the union deficit. It had no implications for the states, and this was really a discussion about the states with the states.
So, was there any discussion, sir? Anupam Mishra from All India Radio. So, was there any discussion about aspirational district program, or because all the themes like drinking water, electricity, everything is related to that.
Yeah. So last time aspirational districts figured very, right at the center. This time they were not on the agenda. You don't want the same thing every time, but it was clearly mentioned very early on by the PM in his opening remark that the aspirational model works because you have clear monitorable targets. There is transparent monitoring on a dashboard that enables people to perform. He was basically saying that approach should be adopted. So as and when a vision document is released, it will come with monitorable milestones. So at least you can measure, are you on track or not? I was very clear. He also said that all actions that are to be taken now onwards, once a vision is in the public domain, should be aligned with the vision.
123.
Sir, this is Girish from Mint. Sir, by when is the vision document likely to be ready? And once it is ready, what is the plan for implementation, given that some of the important subjects like land, health, education, etc., are in the state's domain?
We are waiting for the chief ministers to actually give us responses on vision itself. So the piece of paper you have with some additionalities is with them also. So we will give them about 2 weeks or so, or 3 weeks, to send responses and ideas and thoughts. They've been asked three simple questions. What do you think Viksit Bharat should look like? What do you think is the strategy to reach there? What do you think is critical for your state also to reach there, etc.? Once that comes, that will have to get compiled. So you give us a month or month and a half to get that.
So, Brinda from Hindustan Times. So, my question, of course, you have mentioned that a lot of states did not participate, but speeches and papers are given by these states beforehand. So, were the states that boycotted the meeting then submitted the paper? And if they haven't, in case, then how is Niti Aayog then going ahead and planning development for these states if they continue not to participate in these meetings?
Okay. So, as I said, we had a lot of last minute dropouts. So I have speeches of some states who have not participated also. I have a speech of Jharkhand with me. I have a speech of Pondicherry with me. So not all have dropped out for, boycott reasons, so something would have happened last minute or whatever. So we have that. So we are anyway analyzing those. For those who did not participate, I always say in these things, it is their loss if they are not there. The room is richer if they are there, both for us and for them. Two, nobody is going to be excluded because they are not going to participate. We have one nation end of the day.
95.
I'm Ashumi from The Print. I wanted to ask, one of the internal challenges that the approach paper talks about is bridging the rural-urban income gap. Also, one of the tangible goals in the paper talks about, to become a developing nation, how the per capita income needs to rise 8 times. So in a meeting, did the states discuss how are they planning, what are they doing to meet these tangible goals? And the second question is, when some 10 states, representative from 10 states, the CMs, don't come and are not part of the governing council meeting. So does it impact the implementation of these goals? Because ultimately it's the states who have to kind of implement these goals, work on this. So how does the center state dynamics work in a situation like this?
This urban rural economy need to be seen with a different kind of lens. If overall economy is growing, you will find that rural is also growing, because today more than 50% of manufacturing happen in rural area. So it's not that economy is growing and rural is not growing. We have statistics about agriculture, which is mainly rural, from where we can see how that part of rural income is growing. As far as services and industry are concerned, their division between rural and urban, we get only when there is a change in base. The last data we have on 11-12, the next data will be available when there is again change in waste that is expected to be 24, 25. So this is one reason that you can't, in terms of these definite kind of disparity between rural and urban, but when we are saying that agriculture performance should be improved, about which Prime Minister spoke even today. He talked about increasing productivity. He talked about growing high value crops, expanding area under high value crops, diversification, reducing import of pulses and edible oil. So he spoke about all those kind of things. So when we are talking about these kind of things, in a way we are addressing a rural economy. And this specific talk about, he gave example that people are talking, this is village is defecation free. This village has 100% electrification. Can we talk like this about poverty? That now this village has zero poverty. So that is what I think cover largely what is rural. If data is available, rural and urban industry and services, then we can talk about that how we narrow those disparities.
So what you have said is actually what you're quoting is from an approach paper, which is laying out the issues. So what you're quoting is out from a page where you have actually laid out challenges. Rural-urban divide is one, medical income trap is the other. So these are issues which any strategy has to target. Otherwise, you will not reach where you want to go. As such, we have not yet rolled out the vision and the strategy yet. We are waiting for responses from states, and as they come, they will get incorporated, and when the final document is released, you will get to know. But the fact that it is recognized as an issue that needs to be addressed, that you can't have two diverging economies, I think is well recognized by the fact that it is being talked about.
274.
Sir, I'm Milan from India Today. Your approach paper talks about increasing the labor workforce, especially the women's participation in it. Currently, it's 37, and it says it needs to be increased to 70. So any strategies that have been discussed by states on how to include women? And you also mentioned skilling. So skilled labor is currently at 32, and you want it to be about 100%. Job creation has been a big challenge in India today. And I would just like to understand if states have, such as UP and Uttarakhand, if you mentioned, who put their vision documents forward, have any plans to increase skilling and make that a viable option for the youth?
So I think a lot of chief ministers mentioned women's programs. I think much of it was an appreciation of the government's programs on women. For example, the entrepreneurship program. There was also mention of the skilling programs, etc. I think so far the focus was on the existing programs, as CEO has said, and I think PC also said. The future part of it, you have to give them time to think about and think of new ways of doing it. But a lot of them mentioned that this is very important, that they are doing this, and that some of the successful programs which have been introduced by the center, and some of them have evolved these and added more programs to the system.
No, I think in the opening remarks, the PM was very clear. Skilling is up and square in front of his sights, both skilling and employment. It was reflected in the budget also, he said. And I think a couple of chief ministers clearly laid out what their thoughts are. Andhra Pradesh for one, Chhattisgarh for the other, Assam for the other, Goa is another one. All of them had very clear thoughts on, how to go about tackling it. So I think we need to put all of them together, and it'll come out. It'll come out when we come out with the national strategy, because this is not something that's going to happen overnight, right? It's a glide path, and the numbers are very, very ambitious. I think that's the way.
277.
Sir, till now we are hearing about the need for a population control measures.
Can you introduce yourself, sir?
My name is Premangshu from Anand Bazar Patrika. Till now we are hearing about the need for a population control measures, and now you are talking about this aging problem. So how to deal with that? Have you discussed that? Because we don't have any primary data because census is not yet done. So that is one thing. And second thing is just one clarification. You said that when West Bengal Chief Minister was speaking and her 7 minute was over, that Rajnath Singh just tapped the table. And did she register any protest? Because she has said that central government was not ready to hear the problems of West Bengal.
It was very clear. There was no interruption whatever. She spoke, she crossed. For every chief minister who had crossed 7, the tap would be there. And then people would appropriately try to close it up in the next 30 seconds or 1 minute or whatever. So there was no difference in terms of treatment. No mic was switched off. And I think the finance minister has even given a bite or a tweet somewhere on this particular aspect, clarifying it. We were all, I can even, I have noted down what the West Bengal Chief Minister said. I wouldn't have heard it if our mics had been off. I don't think that was the case at all. And I think everybody got a pretty fair hearing. Nobody even, asked her to cut off. Actually, there was no conversation on that issue. She decided that, okay, my time is up. And that's it. And Cheney had told us earlier that she would leave immediately afterwards. And as I said, we adjusted her from afternoon to morning at her request only. So, you see, this is a forum where the center and states meet and talk. We are there to listen, actually. And I think that was done duly. Also have to be respectful of the time for everybody. You have to finish it by some. We would be holding this at 8 o'clock otherwise, this press briefing. Yeah, you mentioned about population. You see, this is the first time one has even heard the thought being put on the table. Okay, so I'm not naming anybody because in due course people will, start talking about it. There is the word that is why which was used was demographic management. I think that is the word that was used. They didn't say population control. So demographic management probably means two aspects that, that A, you start planning for looking after an aging population. That's one which I mentioned. It could be economic, it could be social, it could be facilities, infrastructural. The second part, of course, is how do you address? There are parts of India, I think barring 3 states, everybody is below the TFR of 2.1, which is the replacement rate. Or maybe only 2 states are above 2.1. See, that means even Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan are probably below 2.1. So with that kind of a situation, and there are states at 1.6 and all, and that they are going to run into rapid population declines at some point in future. We are not talking of anything political. We are talking of simple demographic problem. And it was acknowledged in the room that an old a population with a very high median age is a very different society from a population with a very low median age. It looks, feels very different with that kind of a population. So you have to start thinking about it. You go to Japan, the median age is 50. You will see the difference there.
I'll just add, we've been looking at the, of course, we have talked a lot about what's the global demographic change, but in Indian states, there are states which will be reducing their share of working age population, others which are increasing it. So we have to start thinking of it. We've started doing that. Some of you may have heard I've talked about that internationally, but I think the idea of the persons who mentioned this was this demographic change which is happening and will accelerate in the next 15 years actually. And of course, one aspect of that is the aging, but the second aspect is in terms of skills, the kind of jobs which will be created in the states which are declining relatively or in terms of population, working age. It's all about working age population and those which are increasing. So those internal dynamics, etc., we have to start thinking about.
275%.
Sir, Prashant Sahu from Financial Express. Sir, my question is that most of the developed nations have few sectors where they have world champions, be it technology or manufacturing, and be it some other sector. So which are the sectors you have identified in India where we'll have some world champions? Otherwise, the scale will not be there to sustain that level of that status for long. The second question is, when are we expecting the full scale of action plan to implement the vision document that you are preparing? Yes, something has been announced in the budget, but
A couple of thoughts. I'll take the issue about the action plan and then perhaps leave it to my colleagues to talk about leading sectors and strategy. The reality is that no parliament can commit its successors. So the operative time horizon is the life of this parliament. However, you can have targets for the longer run and try and get a consensus around that. But I do have to also say that I worked for a while at Royal Dutch Shell, which basically believed that there was so much uncertainty about the long run that you needed to operate in terms of scenarios rather than 25-year targets. Now, this is not entirely correct in certain areas like climate change. We are committing ourselves through our nationally determined contributions, and these are going to be updated in due course. So I think we have to get used to the idea that a 25-year horizon is very different from a 5-year horizon, but this is the distinction between planning and strategy. We need to have a clear sense of strategy, and I think there can only be one strategy for India, which is that our basic resource is our human resources, and while we have our Amrit Kal, while we have our demographic dividend, what we need to do is to raise the productivity of those human resources in whichever way we can, because that is the only sure way of getting rising standards of living. But I don't know if you want to.
I think the major emphasis in the discourse today was that if India's economy has to go to the numbers which we have been talking about in 2047, one of the major focus would be manufacturing, and manufacturing with a large focus on high value added products. And Honorable Prime Minister was very clear that manufacturing and services have to go hand in gloves, because it's not one or the other, it's a combination, there are two. And third part was basically to bring more and more IP into the country so that your economic growth goes. So agriculture, services and manufacturing, these are the three major sectors that will find our economic sectors.
And just to going into more specifics you want, all that will come out later, but some are already pretty well known. We've chosen semiconductors as to be one, we've chosen electronics to be the other, mobile phones to be the one more, we've chosen textiles to be an area. I mean, you got a whole host of PLIs. 14 PLIs are actually targeting sectors where we can build up world-class capabilities. And there'll be more such things coming up. Niti is targeting electronic components, auto components, chemicals, these other areas. But you have to understand, once you are the fifth largest economy aiming to be the third or second largest economy, I don't think there are sectors you're going to leave behind. You are a very broad-based economy. So you'll probably develop strengths in probably 80% of all areas. You are not a one-trick pony, you know, you have to have more tricks than that.
Just want to add, you know, the interesting thing which I missed, because you asked about trade and FDI, I was thinking in the usual term, but the important thing here was to link the international with the states, which is the purpose of this conference, right? Not just think of national targets, national approaches, but what does it mean for the states? And I think that's a very important point which my colleague here mentioned, that manufacturing FDI eventually is in the states, okay? And they will not come, or they will come depending on the conditions in the states. We know that there are 4 or 5 major manufacturing states, but if we want to have manufacturing in other states, then you have to create the conditions in every state. So we have been talking about attracting supply chains, attracting anchor investors, but it is kind of abstract, it's national, coming to India. But they are not coming to India eventually, right? They are coming to particular states. So, for example, some people say, oh, too much of it is going to Gujarat or something. But the issue is that every state can create the conditions to attract this FDI. And I think that was the important new focus for me personally of what the PM said today. Very, very important change, that don't talk just about the national attraction, but go into the states and make sure every state can attract FDI, attract manufacturing, attract these anchor investors, and participate in this development.
Yeah.
One amplification to what Dr. Vimani has said, and the implication of that was that this is not about policy, it's about various aspects of state level governance, if you will. So we may on paper have an extreme, and we do have an extremely liberal FDI policy, but yet the FDI is not coming. And that's where if you like, what PM wants Niti to do, which is to have a checklist of what it means to be a friendly state, but equally important, that this should not be a source of polarization, that this has to penetrate even the less successful and less affluent states.
I think Dr. Virmani has put it beautifully. It's about bringing the international down to the state level. If you were to take away three big things from the whole meeting today in terms of conclusion: one, develop an investor-friendly charter where you can rank states on a 100-point scale, so that how good are they in attracting investment and FDI. The second would be this new idea about zero poverty. Gradually you sweep poverty out of the country. And the third would be a basic nod that river grids are important. You've got large parts of eastern India flooding underwater, and large parts of western India which have periodic droughts, or southern India which has a lot of, again, drought problems. So these are three big takeaways if I were to take away: river grids, an industry-friendly charter, investor-friendly charter, and zero poverty.
24.
Sir, I'm Arun Dhanta from CNN News 18. My question is that we all know to achieve the target of Viksit Bharat 2047 is something where you need the support of center and states. But what would you say when people like Mamata Banerjee, who's the Chief Minister of West Bengal, says that Niti Aayog does not have powers, it's a toothless tiger. And in fact, she's saying that Planning Commission is something which should be brought back in place of Niti Aayog.
Look, what should I? Okay, fine. You see, that the Niti Aayog exists is a matter of fact, and it's reality. So that is it. Two, it's not that Niti Aayog doesn't have any functions. It has functions. The vision documents of most states which have been prepared with active cooperation, sometime by Niti Aayog itself, working with state government officers, etc. It has actually transited into a new roles. It's a question of actually what is past and what is present or the future are very different things, and change is always, disconcerting. What is the change? It is a forum not for distributing money, because that is now done by Finance Ministry. And what the Niti does, it acts as the long-term strategic planning body of the government. It acts as a policy think tank of the government. It acts as a forum where the center and states sit together and discuss issues and generate consensus. And fourth, it is an advisory body on any specific issue with states. As on date, Niti has at least 3 engagements on a permanent basis, not workshops, with umpteen number of states. You go to Gujarat, we have a vision going on there. We are preparing a Surat plan for the future. You go to some other state, we are preparing a plan for Varanasi. We are preparing a PPP plan for them. We go to some other state, we go to Odisha, you go to Andhra, Madhya Pradesh, all over the country. And it doesn't matter what is the political character. They reach out to us. We actually distribute a document to them saying that these are the 30. We are the internal consulting powerhouse of the government. And I think that is what. Now, that was not a role which is perceived to be felt by the Planning Commission. It was getting diverted by the primary function of distributing funds. And therefore, but by the way, while that is one view, which the Honorable Chief Minister of West Bengal probably had, there is an equally strong view that the Planning Commission didn't have any money allocation function also. A lot of people would say, after a lot of discussion in Planning Commission, we get another 100 crores. Is it worth the effort? So there's a counter view to that also. So there are enough people who felt that way. But anyway, that's a debate which is irrelevant because there are other agencies. That function has not disappeared within government. It is being done by something. If somebody doesn't want to use Niti Aayog, that's their choice. And I don't see that happening. We are quite popular.
In fact, I would like to add here that the state governments today are going out of the way to set up institutions like Niti Aayog in their own ambit. State transformation institutions in all states have been set up now, and more are coming up. So that shows the efficacy of Niti Aayog in actually doing cooperative federalism in a big way and ensuring that the discourse between center and the states is one that of a progressive thinking rather than just distributing money.
Perhaps frame the question slightly differently. I think quite an important motive for the Prime Minister to wind up the Planning Commission and create Niti Aayog was that the whole concept of a planning commission, which dated back really to Soviet days, was inappropriate 30 years after a liberalization. And I think to some extent the comments of the Honorable Chief Minister derive from a belief that the way development works is through the allocation of government resources. But the way development works, or should work, is through policies that stimulate the private sector. And the financial allocation by government should be, as it were, the icing on the cake, not the cake itself. And I think Niti Aayog has been freed up to think about what these larger policies are. I'll just give an example. One of the findings is that Indian firms choose to remain pygmies in terms of employment. And one reason we have a less than satisfactory employment position is that there are all kinds of barriers, self-imposed barriers for firms to take on more employees, in contrast, certainly with the United States. Now, we're not going to get the kind of rising productivity, and the Prime Minister mentioned this, until we get our labor force more into the formal sector. That's not something that government funding can do. That's about policy at the state level, policy at the national level. And if not Niti, the departments can do it, but it is very much the view of the Honorable Prime Minister. They don't have the bandwidth, they don't have the scope, and that's where Niti should lead.
Technical. On fiscal, the Finance Commission raised the state's share of taxes in the central union government's taxes from 32 to 42%. That is the other side of the coin of the funding which Planning Commission used to do of the states. So those are related. It's not, you shouldn't think of them independently. I'm just making a technical point that they go together. That share would not have been raised from 32 to 42% if there was still a Planning Commission giving funds to the states.
So we will take last two questions. 244, please.
Sir,
ठीक है, आवाज आ रही थी.
हेलो सर, नीरज हूँ न्यूज़ 18 इंडिया से. आपने बताया कि 10 लोग आज गैर मौजूद रहे आज की बैठक में. ज़्यादातर लोगों का राजनीतिक कारणों की वजह से ना आना बताया गया. उन्होंने घोषणा भी पहले कर दी थी कि वो बैठक में हिस्सा नहीं लेंगे, लेकिन आपने कहा कि अंतिम वक्त में हेमंत सोरेन ने मना किया बैठक में ना आने से. उनकी वजह क्या थी ना आने की, और अगर कुछ मुख्यमंत्रियों के ना आने की वजह आप बता सके.
ना आने वाले वजह तो नहीं बताते, ठीक है जी। जिन लोगों ने, सीधी सी बात है। दूसरा, जो लोग, भाई सीधी सी बात है, उसमें बहुत लंबा जवाब की जरूरत नहीं। दूसरा, जिन्होंने बहुत पहले ही बता दिया नहीं आएंगे, हमें पहले से मालूम था, केरला, बिहार, हाँ, तो इस प्रकार के 2-3 राज्य थे जिनको हमें पहले मालूम था ये नहीं आ रहेंगे, तो बहुत पहले बता दिया। पुदुचेरी का कुछ लास्ट मिनट रहा होगा, बिकॉज कल तक तो देवर स्पीचेस आ गई हैं। झारखंड का भी, उनका तो चीफ सेक्रेटरी दिल्ली आ भी गया था, ठीक है जी। तो आई डोंट नो लास्ट मिनट क्या डेवलपमेंट है, हम उसको ट्रैक नहीं कर रहे। देखिए जी, जो नीति आयोग इज अ वेरी नॉट अ प्लेस वेयर मनीज आर डिस्कस्ड, वी आर एक्चुअली डिस्कसिंग आपके राज्य के लिए हम लोग क्या कर सकते हैं, आप देश के लिए क्या कर सकते हो। सो इट्स अ प्लेस फॉर हेल्दी इंटरेक्शन एंड आइडियाज।
249. This is the last question.
I am Shikha from राष्ट्रीय संस्कृति, एडिटर इन चीफ। सर, मैं आपसे बहुत छोटा सा प्रश्न करने जा रही हूँ, मुझे छोटा सा ही उत्तर चाहिए सर। पहली बात यह है कि हमारे पास 2047 का हम सपना दिखा रहे हैं, हमारा 2024 चल रहा है। 2029 तक हमारे पास क्या लक्ष्य हैं, क्या संकल्प हैं, हम उनको किस प्रकार से पूरा करने जा रहे हैं और उसका क्या रोड मैप होगा, सिर्फ ये जानना चाहूंगी मैं सर आपसे। थैंक यू सो मच।
देखिए जी, 47 का जो योजना आपको मिलेगा उसमें 2 टुकड़े होंगे, एक 5 साल का और एक 25 साल का, दोनों उसे में शामिल होंगे। जब ये रिलीज होगा आपको मिल जाएगा। जो 5 साल का होगा वो बहुत ही डिटेल्ड रहेगा, उसमें विस्तृत रूप से होगा, क्योंकि 5 साल का, जैसे वीसी ने बताया, हम लोग उसका कल्पना आज कर सकते हैं। 25 साल का सिद्धांतिक होता है और एक तरफ मार्गदर्शक टाइप होता है। तो ये दोनों आएंगे, जब आएंगे तब हम अलग से उस समय मिलेंगे, उस समय बताएंगे। आज वो चर्चा न हुई थी, न तय कर रहे थे आज। बिल्कुल। मैं नहीं, आपने मेरा पहला शब्द, पहला वाक्य नहीं सुना। मैंने कहा जब विजन आएगा उसमें 47 का भी लक्ष्य होगा और 5 साल का भी लक्ष्य होगा। और अभी सारे विभाग बना रहे हैं अपने 5 साल के लक्ष्य। 5 साल के लक्ष्य जो होते हैं बहुत ही ठोस और नापने लायक होते हैं। दूसरे वाले, मैंने क्या कहा, मार्गदर्शक टाइप होते हैं, ठीक है जी। वो अभी निकाला नहीं है, आएंगे आपके पास।
So thank you very much, friends, for this press conference, attending the press conference. Now you can have refreshments at the cafeteria on 4th floor. Thank you very much.